Welcome back to the program. I want to start tonight with something that we all heard 45 years ago. You don't need to see the person's face because you will recognize the voice instantly. It's the great Mr. Rogers. But it's what he said in 1980 that is so important today. Listen closely.
Boys from the beginning. If you were born a boy, you stay a boy.
If you were born a boy, you stay a boy. Continue.
Girls are girls right from the start. If you were born a girl, you stay a girl. And
If you're born a girl, you stay a girl. What a concept.
grow up to be a lady. Everybody's fancy. Everybody's fine. Your body's fancy, and so is mine. Only girls can be the mommies. Only boys can be the daddies. Yes, sir. Everybody's fancy. Everybody's fine. Your body's fancy, and so is mine. Boys from...
So why am I playing that? I'm playing that because that was Mr. Rogers in 1980 when yours truly was 5 years old. And as a child, I watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood quite extensively. I watched Sesame Street. I watched all of those shows. Why? Because at that time, it wasn't about indoctrination. It was about actual education and truthful education, saying that when you're a boy, you grow up to be a man. When you're a girl, you grow up to be a woman. Guess what, folks? Guess what? This man was murdered because he told the truth from 45 years ago. Imagine that. I want that to sink in. How did we get here? Well, it's pretty simple. Education, of course, was hijacked. Indoctrination started. And the next thing you know, these teachers and these educators and social media, of course, came about, and television and radio and all these things, and movies started pushing it, and it started to confuse an entire generation. And it wasn't just about people being gay or being bisexual. No, they had to push it even further. You can be whatever you want, little Johnny, or whatever you want, little Sally. You're not a little boy or a little girl. You can pretend to be whatever you want. And if anyone says that you can't, well, then you should just go kill them. It's sick. It's demented. And it's amazing when you think about it. That was only 45 years ago, folks. They were teaching our children correctly. Now look at us. Unreal. As far as the Nobel Peace Prize, I guess apparently stopping 8 wars wasn't enough for these douchebags over at the Nobel Peace Prize committee or whoever they are. So all I can say is you can take your Nobel Peace Prize and shove it straight up your assholes, okay? Because that's where it belongs. I hope it gets stuck in there, and I hope you die of dysentery because of it. President Trump deserved the award. No one has stopped that many wars in that amount of time. It's ridiculous, but it goes to show you that the award means absolutely nothing. Because if it did, and it was an honest and ethical selection committee, President Trump would have received it. So that's all I can say about that one. Now, today, President Trump put out a pretty harsh statement on Truth Social about China, right? Okay. So let's talk about that real quick. Here was President Trump's statement. It's kind of a long one. It has just been learned. Okay, fine, whatever. It's just been learned that China has taken an extraordinary aggressive position on trade in sending an extremely hostile letter to the entire world stating that they were going to, effective November 1st of 2025, so in a few weeks, impose large-scale export controls on virtually every product that they make, and some not even made by them. This affects every country without exception and was obviously a plan devised by them many years ago. It is absolutely unheard of in international trade and a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations. Based on the fact that China has taken this unprecedented position, and speaking only for the United States of America and not other nations who were similarly threatened, starting November 1st, 2025, or sooner, depending on any further actions or changes taken by China, the United States of America will impose a tariff of 100% on China over and above any tariff that they are currently paying. Also, on November 1st, we will impose export controls on any and all critical software. It is impossible to believe that China would have taken such an action, but they have, and the rest is history. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So that brings me to the big question. Why? Why did China do this? Well, it's something that I covered in Preserving Liberty in the chapter, The China Syndrome, and it's called the Belt and Road Projects, or BRI, Belt and Road Initiatives. Now, back in March of 2019 is when I did this video here. Now, this is the shorter version of it, and yes, there's a little bit of comic relief in it as well. But I want you to listen to what I said 6 years ago, okay? I'm always way ahead of everybody else. 6 years ago, listen to this.
Welcome back to the program. You know, it may seem to anyone who's paying attention that the only people that cannot see that China's main goal is world domination are the Democrats, a subspecies of barely human beings so unintelligent that it is an actual miracle that they still know how to keep breathing. But enough about these permanent sufferers of anal cranial invergenitis, aka head and ass disease. Let's talk about the topic on hand. What is China's Belt and Road Initiative? Why is it important? And why should you, as Americans, be not only notified of this, aware of this, but possibly be frightened of this? Well, I'm going to tell you. The BRI, or as it's known, the Belt Road Initiative, is a massive global infrastructure, transportation, and energy project first introduced by President Xi Jinping in 2013. The project consists of the Chinese government lending vast amounts of capital and money to so far more than 138 countries around the world to build roads, highways, railroads, shipping lanes, and other transportation-related projects. So far, China has invested in these projects, again, in over 138 countries, to the tune of anywhere between $1 trillion to as much as $8 trillion. Now, what China is doing by doing this is engaging in what is called debt trap diplomacy. Debt trap diplomacy is a strategy of extracting either political concessions or possibly even financial and ownership takeover of certain sectors of a country or possibly even an entire country when they default or they cannot pay back these loans. This is the equivalent of a worldwide global extortion scheme that the Chinese Communist government is perpetrating on the rest of the world.
So that was me in March 27th to be exact, of 2019. So 6 years ago, 5.5, whatever it is. I don't do the math. And so I was talking about the Belt and Road Initiative back then. I was warning people back then that their goal back then and is now world domination. This is why I continuously say that the existential threat to the United States and the entire rest of the world, there is no bigger threat than the Chinese Communist Party and China in particular. Now, the reason they are doing what they're doing is because of these countries that have finally figured out that you can't get free infrastructure and free money from the CCP, okay? And that was 130, now it's over 150. That was 1 trillion to 8 trillion. It's much closer to that 8 trillion number. So what does that mean? That means that they have a lot of money invested in these infrastructure projects, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about some of the things that have happened recently that pretty much goes to show you these countries aren't too thrilled with China. So let's see. You have, give me 1 second here. Here it is right here. So you have 150 countries that have now put their cash, their money, whatever, into these projects. And you have multiple countries around the world that are so upset with China and what they have done to them. See, what they do is they're predatory. They go into these countries knowing that they cannot pay back this debt. Impossible. They don't have the gross domestic product. They don't have the economy. They don't have anything to pay back these debt. And China knows that, but they don't care. So what do? They lend them money, and they tell them that you have X amount of years to pay back whatever it may be. It could be for a bridge. It could be for a tunnel. It could be for a school, a hospital, whatever, a dam, whatever it might be. Whatever it is for that country that they want, China then goes and builds it. But it's shitty, shoddy work. That's another thing. So a lot of the work isn't even complete, number one. And number two, when it is complete, more than half, actually, of these projects throughout the years have crumbled, have killed people, have fallen apart, have not been finished. So these countries are finally waking up and going, wait a minute, you promised me X, Y, and Z, and you didn't deliver. I'm not paying you anymore. So what's China doing? They're saying, no, wait. Please continue to pay us. We'll extend your loan even longer, and we'll even give you a little bit more money. So what are they doing? They're hooking them in even deeper, okay? It's like having, if you ever went blue fishing on the ocean, that's a really hard fish to reel in. If you hook one, it's going to take a while to get them into the boat, right? They swim, they fight, they swim, they fight. So what's China doing? They're blue fishing in all these different countries. And now they're putting the hook into their mouth more, and they're letting them swim and swim and swim and swim until they're too tired. And once they're too tired or too exhausted or financially exhausted and they have no way to pay it back, guess what they do? Give me the money. No, you don't have the money? Oh, well, then we're going to take over your country, okay? That's what they're doing. So, as they're doing that, these countries are saying no more. And there's already been about 10% that have backed out of some of these deals. What's China going to do? Go to war against 150 different countries? Of course not. So you know how you take down China? I'll tell you. Every one of these countries that has a Belt and Road Initiative project, stop paying. Just stop paying. What are they going to do? Seriously, what are they going to do? They're going to bomb and nuke all these countries? Of course not. They are overextended. Their middle class has decreased in size. They have this entire younger generation that refuses to work. Manufacturing is down 200%. Distribution is down. India has now stepped up and stepped in and has taken over the majority of their trading with the United States. So we're not as dependent anymore, thankfully. We still are. Don't get me wrong, we still are, but not as bad. And they have 45% of all their trade locked in to these BRI projects. They are right now in their national debt is about $11 trillion. I think $2.5 trillion of that is to the United States, so not a lot. and their middle class has shrunk from 700 million down to 550 million now. Their population is 1.4 billion right now. They have still to this day, even though they don't have the one-child policy anymore, they have an imbalance of many, many, many hundreds and thousands and millions more men than there are women. So their population is getting older, but yet it's not reproducing because they have such an imbalance. So guess what? They're contracting. They're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We can wipe out, let me use those words correctly, we can wipe out China and the CCP in a decade if we're smart about it. These countries that owe them money, stiff them. Stiff them 100%. That's going to put a huge dent in their economy. Next thing we do, we tell Walmart and Target and these cheap, shitty dollar stores that I put in my book, by the way, in the China Syndrome, I put it all in there, and I gave all the suggestions and all the solutions, but I'll tell you what it is. We put huge tariffs. That's right. We need to treat Walmart, Target, all these other, box stores that are out there across the country, anything that sells, Amazon, doesn't matter who it is, if you sell Chinese products, you need to have a tariff put on you. That's right. An American company needs to have a tariff put on you. We need to treat these companies exactly as we treat when manufacturers take manufacturing offshore to China or wherever it may be, or these car manufacturers decide to go to China or Korea or wherever it is, or India, wherever it is, and they get tariffed at major percentages. But if they come here, no tariffs. We need to do the same thing in our commerce economy to all these stores in this country that continue to sell us out and sell cheap, shitty Chinese goods made by Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. Okay? That's what needs to happen. And if we did that, and we took those 2 steps alone, we would crush. We wouldn't have to fire one shot. We would crush. Of course, take all the manufacturing away from China, all the medical supplies, all the pharmaceuticals. They just did a huge deal with AstraZeneca, $50 billion today. They've done a bunch of deals, Johnson & Johnson, so many of these other drug companies, Novartis. There's a whole list of them on the website. There's like 40 of them that they've done deals with. Now, I'm not a big fan of big pharma, but I don't want my pharma coming from China either. So if we can invest it here, then we can take it away from China. We have to understand, and I've said this before, and I said it in the book, every single time we buy something from China, we are adding another bullet, another gun, another missile, another tank, another warplane, another submarine, another drone, another you name it. And yes, another Wuhan Institute of Virology bioterrorism lab as well. We've got to get smart. But the reality is, we can wipe out China financially, get them to a point where they're so impoverished and poor in about 10 years, and guess what? The people of China, they'll be ripe to take out their own leadership. I am, in some respects, an expert on China. Am I Gordon Chang? No. Am I, Peter Navarro? No, I'm not. But I do know enough, and I've studied enough, and I've known enough throughout the years, and I've been correct enough on all of this. So the reality is, we can take China out in a decade financially. All we have to do is have the willpower to do it. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you on the next one. Welcome back to the program. So last night on Full Throttle Thursday, we discussed the Letitia James indictment. And in that, we talked about what we thought was going to happen. Most of us said that she's going to go to jail. Some didn't think it was going to happen. Well, I am here to tell you that, yes, indeed, she's going to prison, and for a very, very long time. Now, there's more information that's coming out, and an expert who actually unearthed all of the mortgage fraud on Letitia James is somebody that's been on my show. You may remember this gentleman, and his name is Joel Gilbert. He's a filmmaker, and I did an interview with him a while back. At the time, he was telling me and everyone else that would listen that Michelle Obama is absolutely going to run and be the nominee. You may remember that. It was an interview about more than 6 months ago, probably a year ago, something like that, close to it anyway. Long story short, he was on Steve Bannon's War Room today. And remember, this is the guy that uncovered the fraud on Letitia James. I want you to listen to this, and we're going to talk about it.
Enjoy this segment. Joe, one thing I tell you about Gilbert, when he gets on something, it's like a dog on a bone. Okay, so Joe, I'm gonna toss it to you. You've got a great piece up in Gateway Pundit, the Jim Hoft, the great Gateway Pundit. But take it from the top, because they're all saying last night, "Oh, this we didn't even know about this one. This was nothing." And they're implying there's nothing else there, or we have no other case. I say there's a superseding indictment coming with a whole lot more. Walk us through it, sir.
Okay, well, I can start walking you through it by telling you that the Democrats threw up black prosecutors, Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis, and Letitia James, to go after Donald Trump on charges that they knew would not stick. So they looked at these black prosecutors as cannon fodder. They simply sacrificed them knowing that they would probably go down for what they were doing. Sure enough, Tish James
And they were stupid enough to take the bait.
Probably should not have been charging Donald Trump with trumped up charges of mortgage fraud in New York, given the fact that New York is a public record state and that all of her mortgages for 43 years were online for myself or anybody else to pull up. And what I found is a pattern of mortgage fraud going all the way back to 1983 when she was only 24 years old.
43 years of mortgage fraud. Not one or two, not a few instances here and there. No, 43 years of mortgage fraud.
She purchased her first home with her father, claiming that her father was her husband. They purchased it as husband and wife in order to help Letitia qualify for a mortgage that she was not entitled to. Letitia continued this pattern of mortgage fraud with her building in Brooklyn. She bought a 4-story, 5-unit apartment building. And for 24 years, she told the banks it was either 4 units or 1 unit, even though the certificate of occupancy for the building said it was 5 units. Now, this is very significant because if you have 4 units or less, you get a residential mortgage rate, which is lower. You also get almost no closing costs.
Remember, I was in the mortgage industry and the automobile industry before I got into broadcasting. And it's true. If you have less, there's owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied. So she's buying a building that was going to be non-owner-occupied, right? A rental property. Obviously, the risk factors are higher for the bank. Therefore, the rates are higher. She lied.
5 units or higher, like Letitia had, you get high interest rates and very high closing costs. So Letitia gamed the system in New York. She also didn't register for rent stabilization, which she was supposed to do every year. And she simply had her building is a crime scene, and she defrauded and scammed banks for 24 years to save money she wasn't entitled to. Meanwhile, she bought 3 homes in the state of Virginia, where her mother was from. Every one of those 3 homes, there's mortgage fraud. She buys a foreclosure with her aunt, and then she doesn't appear on the deed, which is illegal. She buys a house at Sterling Avenue in Norfolk, Virginia, and she explicitly says, I bought this for my niece's children to make us think that, she's trying to help little kids. Well, her niece's 2 children are adult convicted felons. One of them is an absconder from justice with an arrest warrant out in North Carolina. So Letitia bought the property specifically to harbor a fugitive. Now, on that property, my colleague Sam Antar pointed out that Letitia claimed that would be her primary residence. It was actually rejected by the bank 9 times. They would not approve the loan. The 10th time, Letitia says, that's going to be my primary residence. It gets approved, and that was illegal because she got the mortgage and low.
She tried 9 times and was denied 9 times for a mortgage, and then lied again and finally got it on the 10th.
Or interest rates because she'd be the primary resident. The indictment by Ms. Halligan yesterday revolves around the third property on Perone Avenue. And on that property, she took out a specialized loan that specifically said Letitia had to either live there or use it as a second residence. She was not allowed to rent it out. Sure enough, Letitia simply rented it out. So that was really the opening shot, because that's the smallest. It's bank fraud charges with 30 years in prison for bank fraud. But I believe there's, and my sources tell me there's more indictments coming. This is just the tip of the iceberg, because the Sterling property in Virginia, she explicitly got rejected 9 times before she said, okay, it'll be my primary residence. Back in New York, it's a separate grand jury, separate jurisdiction, and it's 24 years of mortgage fraud. The most recent was 2021 with a credit line mortgage from Citizens Bank. She took out a $200,000 credit line loan from Citizens Bank in 2021, well within the statute of limitations, saying that it was a one-family dwelling, one family instead of 5. That was fraud. She did it again and again. She got a HAMP loan as well.
Hang on one second. We're going to hold Joel Gilbert through the top of the 11 o'clock hour. Gilbert, Joel, because look, Gilbert is half crazy, half mad. That's why we love him. When he gets on something, he drills down in the details. He brings the receipts. This is what mainstream media is not doing with Weissman. All the Stephanie Rule, MSNBC. A superseding indictment is going to come. She's a crook. Everything she puts her hands on, she's either defrauding a bank, she's got a fraud mortgage, or she's stealing tax revenue from the state, and she's the attorney general. And she ran, the only reason she's attorney general, because she ran on putting Trump and everybody around Trump in prison. Well, guess what? The hunted have become the hunters, and Big Tish is going to go away for a long, 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 long time. Joe Gilbert, I just want to make sure, let's take a couple minutes. Everything she owns, she's defrauded either a bank, a mortgage company, or the state for taxes. Take it to the top, and let's start in New York, and then we'll work down to Virginia. All of her properties, sir. Hit it.
Look, all right, look, in general, Letitia James has to set the example. She's the attorney general. People look at her and they notice, and everything she's done, every mortgage transaction she did, it's tax fraud, insurance fraud, mortgage fraud, bank fraud, wire fraud. Everything she touches is a crime. Now, the biggest one in her New York apartment building, actually the first one I came out with on Gateway Pundit in March, she had a 10% adjustable rate loan on this apartment building, and she applied for a HAMP loan under the TARP program. You remember the TARP program out of Washington, D.C., out of U.S. Treasury.
So this lying bitch was even stealing from the taxpayers and using TARP money. Imagine that. Not only the other crimes that she did. And again, and she ran on not only getting Trump, but then she went after him for mortgage fraud. You want to talk about the balls on this woman? She probably has them.
She wanted to replace her 10% loan with a 2.7% loan on the back of the American taxpayer. To get that loan, she said, I have a financial hardship. You had to have a financial hardship to get it. And she was making $14,000 a month at the time from her city council job and from her rents and a professorship. So that was very likely a lie, 14 grand a month. And she said
it's these elitist, snobby attitudes that I am above the law. You peasants have to pay and you have to abide by the law. But Tish James can be up here on her pedestal eating chicken wings, and I can do mortgage fraud and never have to worry about being held accountable. Yeah? I don't think so, Tish.
It's only 4 units in her building because the program was not eligible for 5 units or more, and she had 5 units. So Letitia James has blatantly defrauded and cheated the state of New York, every bank she's ever dealt with. She committed tax fraud, wire fraud. That's why this first indictment that came out in Virginia is just the tip of the iceberg. There's much more coming. There's a separate grand jury in New York, and there's no way she can get out of it by saying, oh, it's political retribution. It's just comical. The hypocrisy is just breathtaking, claiming weaponization, claiming political goals. Letitia James said that any slight problem with your mortgage is a grave crime that you must be punished for, even if no money is lost. Well, in Letitia James' case, she cheated banks and mortgage companies out of thousands of dollars, taxes,
Probably millions of dollars.
you name it. So it's all there, and I think she's going to go to jail because there's just too much. There's a long pattern of 43 years of mortgage fraud.
Okay, now, the two charges that she's been charged with, just those two, never mind anything else, just those two, 30 years if she was convicted. I'm going to make you a prediction right now. I think there's another 3 to 5 more superseding indictments that are coming. Remember, this is just on the Virginia property. This is not, and by the way, there's 3 Virginia properties. This is only on 1 Virginia property, and it's not even on the main one. Not to mention, she has property, I think, in Georgia, and of course, she has property in New York. You have 3 states that she has committed mortgage fraud on. And not just mortgage fraud, wire fraud, insurance fraud, right? Because insurance rates would have been different for different dwellings and things like that. So she defrauded insurance companies as well. Mortgage companies, lending institutions, possibly embezzlement. Maybe this is even a conspiracy. I don't know. I'm not going to go there yet. But each one of these are serious indictments and felonies. So I'm going to go out on a limb. And I'm going to say that she's looking at 100 years. Bernstein, did you just say 100 years? Hell yes, I did. She's looking at 100 years or more in prison. Now I know what you're thinking. Josh, come on, that's crazy. You're nuts. There's no way she's going to see even close to that amount of time. I agree. Now, why do I agree? Because she's going to plea bargain smartly. That's why. And guess what? She's going to do, in my estimation, between 16 and 24 years. Mark it down. Put it in the bank. When Josh Trajamas says something, he's on target. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.